Perfect.
This meeting is being recorded.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to introduce all the panelists, and I'm going to I'll explain, I guess, everything in a minute, but I'd like everybody to put themselves on mute to start. Cameras on or cameras off. It doesn't bother me. We will definitely provide plenty of time for questions and discussions and, for goal setting. So welcome everyone. I want to thank everybody for coming. This is a huge deal for our county. I think that this is one of the larger gatherings of restaurants that I've seen in a lot of the years that I've run here. So I'll back up a little bit. I'm Zach Dolezal. I'm the chef and owner of Duke's Ale House and Kitchen in downtown Crystal Lake. My family has run it since 1995. I came in 2008 with a more eco-conscious mindset, and we've been working really hard to source locally and be as sustainable of a restaurant as possible. And I joined the Environmental Defenders on the board this last year. I've been involved with them for a long time, but after joining the board, I quickly joined the Waste Reduction Action Team, and with them we are putting on this summit. So it was a quick turnaround for us for me to get into waste reduction for the county. So I'm sorry, I get distracted easily on these. I wish we were in person, but yeah. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. All right. So all of you here, I know that all of you are here because you already have some idea of sustainability, or at least want to become more sustainable, or just have some questions about it. And we all know that customers more and more are demanding that we provide eco-conscious answers for them. So I've got a few panelists here with me that are going to help discuss the ins and outs and of becoming more sustainable. We have a lot of resources here and a lot of expertise to provide you with. So the thousands of restaurants and food service businesses in our county can make a difference, and we need all of us to be able to join together and do that. So I'm hoping that this is the beginning of something much bigger than just a summit, but to allow us to have more conversations and work together on something, because a lot of us are family-owned businesses, and we struggle day to day anyways with cost controls and finding time and resources. And then we all have unique challenges to our restaurant, whether it be space or what types of containers we need. So I'm with our experts, we're hopefully going to answer some more of those questions. We are focusing on composting and getting rid of single-use plastics and styrofoam from our establishments. So I want to let you know that there are options for composting. It is possible for all of us to start composting today. Maybe not in the exact way that we all envision, but we do have some resources for you to be able to do that. And those are in the welcome packet, and we'll discuss those as we go through as well. There are much greener options for carryout containers. When EcoProducts showed me their product line, I was just amazed at the amount of variety of products that they have and the efforts that they're going through to make sure that those products remain compostable. Other counties across the nations have already adopted more sustainable practices. So this is nothing new, but Illinois is still far behind most other states in becoming sustainable and providing options for restaurants to be able to become more sustainable. But we are going to discuss those options for Illinois specifically today at this discussion. Together we can come up with and obtain solutions. So this is not necessarily a summit for providing you with all the answers, but it's also a starting point to help us encourage waste haulers and find resources for ourselves and then encourage other restaurants to do the same thing. The most important thing is we got to make money at the end of the day, and we can be green and still make money. And if you know, it is going to come at a cost, but I think in the end we can feel better about what we serve and the way we serve it. So and I believe that's why we're all here to have anyways. So and the one thing I like to mention before I introduce the panelists is that if we don't start doing these things, that there are going to be changes that are going to be required, not only by the government, but by our guests as well, that we're going to need to make these changes, whether we like it or not. So you joining this summit is a huge step, but you know, people are already seeking out the restaurants that are providing greener options and more sustainability. So we want to make sure that we stay ahead of that curve. And as a county, we have always led a lot of sustainable efforts in our state with the defenders and with environmental practices. So I want to continue that trend. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first panelist, Jamie Brown. I believe most of you, I hope, attended the keynote session. But Jamie Brown, I have been having, she introduced herself at the keynote, but I originally started talking to Jamie Brown, you know, basically happened through Edward Don, who we currently source a lot of our compostable packaging through. And working with them and with Hody Group, I believe Melissa's on this call as well. It was really interesting to find out that there's still a lot of misinformation out there about compostable products and the compostability of them. And there's multiple changes occurring every single day within our system that are making things somewhat more challenging, not only with COVID and supply chain issues, but with composters dealing with things that aren't compostable ending up in their systems and them having some issues with the waste stream, that they're getting a lot of contaminants in there. So the options we have right now at this time are only for food scraps. So that's, you know, and I have contact information from them. And then a little bit later, Lakeshore Recycling Systems is going to join up. They own Prairie Land now. So they're going to talk about some of the challenges that they face. But we need to be a voice and a strong voice in, you know, making sure that compostable plastics and compostable containers are allowed into our compost facilities. Because I know as restaurants, we even, you know, we're not allowed to put little tiny paper cups right now into our compost bin, and things like that, you know, are going to be really important for us, being able to scrape the food waste from the plates of our guests and things like that. So we're going to talk in a little more detail about that. So I keep deferring up. But Jamie Brown, yes, I've been working with her and having lots of conversations with her. It's been very interesting to learn about everything from her. She is an expert in these products and working with these waste haulers. She's had lots of conversations with composters and waste haulers in her area. She has worked as a waste hauler, a compost waste hauler, so she's got experience in there as well. So without further ado, Jamie Brown with EcoProducts.
Thanks, Zach. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to do like a answer a couple of questions, because I think the bulk of the value is going to be in our conversation and the questions that come around that. So one of the questions that Zach was asking is about the availability of compostables, and EcoProducts as a manufacturer has probably the largest bundle of products. Granted, supply chain has put a little bit of a wrinkle into that. So we've had to reduce to a core amount of products that we're offering just to make sure that everybody has what they need. But we've got over 450 SKUs. So plenty of offerings that fit most every need. One thing that you want to be mindful of is what is compostable and what is not. Zach mentioned that contamination and lookalikes are one of the main challenges that composters have in accepting packaging. So I would like to just kind of clarify a couple of terms. When people are saying compostable, you want to make sure that it's got third party, well, everything, any recycling claims or composting claims, you want to look for third party verification. So with compostable items, you want to, on the baseline, make sure that it has ASTM standards, which are basic manufacturing standards. The second level, you always want to make sure that it's BPI certified, which is the Biodegradable Products Institute. It's got to have that logo on it. That means that it's been lab tested to break down in commercial composting facilities. And then what EcoProducts does in addition to that, that's kind of the BPI is the gold standard. What we do is the one step further, where we work with this Composting Manufacturers Alliance, which is a group of composters across the country that are actually doing field testing. So the products not only are proven to break down chemically, but they're proven to break down in the field. And if composters are saying that the products don't break down, we're happy to test them in their sites as well, or bring resources that help them better manage their manufacturing processes. So anything compostable, you want to make sure that it's got a minimum of BPI certification, even better CMA. And then a couple of things to be aware of. Some of the terms that can be super confusing are biodegradable, which pretty much everything is biodegradable. Our bodies are biodegradable, but the key to that is in how much time. And we know that single-use plastics or any plastics don't break down in the environment. So pretty much every single plastic that has ever been produced is still in the environment in some form or fashion, whether it's a new good or whether it's a micro plastic that you can't see with your naked eye. So plastics break up, they don't break down. So whenever someone says biodegradable, have your antennas go up, because a lot of people think that they're doing the right thing, and brands can use this as a marketing ploy, which is a little misleading. I always use the example of my doggy poop bags. You know, I have it sitting right here. I don't know if you can see, but yeah, these say earth rated. And when you look closely, love the planet, love your pet, love the planet. No certification. When you actually examine what they're talking about the packaging. It's the core of the plastic is made from 10% recycled material. So have your antennas up whenever somebody says biodegradable. Same with recycling. A lot of confusion can be around that. And as I talked about in my talk, unfortunately, a lot of the food service items, the MRFs, the facilities that handle these materials aren't always set up to take a lot of those items because they have a different variety of sorting materials. I would love to take any interested parties on a tour of a MRF when we can all get together, but it's just part of what we need to do to develop our infrastructure. So we focus more on the recycled content that we're putting into that line of our goods. And unfortunately, it doesn't always mean that it's recyclable. So you've got to check with your local municipality. So if you're making a choice for your restaurant, you know, between reusable, recyclable, and compostable, check out all of those factors and make the best decision that you can based on the availability of what's out there, and you know, what fits best into your value system and those of your customers. Let's see, what else did I have in my notes here? I think that that's a good tee up. The other thing that I wanted to address a little bit is some of the challenges. You know, we can definitely in your county start with back of the house composting food scraps. That can make a huge impact. And we can always switch to a more sustainable type of takeout packaging. As we're working with the local, you know, local governments, local stakeholders on creating more demand. Scott had mentioned in some of the Q&A, the more demand we create, the more likely we are to bring some of the folks that aren't as knowledgeable or aware of the benefits of providing these services. And I'm talking about haulers and composters. We're actually doing a study in Chicago where we can show the economics, because we like to, we refer to our compostable products as vessels for getting more food waste out of the landfill. And third-party studies have shown that, you know, you can get about 50% waste reduction by doing back of the house, but you can really make dramatic strides more towards zero waste when you're adding the post-consumer. So more food waste, more packaging, and really boosting those waste diversion numbers up into the 70, all the way above 90%. So it is possible. We just have a few challenges. And like one of the trade magazines was saying this week, she was saying, with every solution we have a host of challenges, and how we know we're making progress is when what we're doing kind of outweighs some of those other things that offset it. So it's not perfect, but we've got solutions that we can work in the meantime. And with all of us making strides together, we can go further and further.
Well, thank you very much, Jamie. And yes, we're going to leave plenty of time for questions and discussions at the end, or after our introductions. So next up, we have Michael Oshman of the Green Restaurant Association. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Green Restaurant Association, but they are a certification program, a nonprofit organization. They formed in 1990 to create environmental sustainability in the restaurant industry. For over 31 years, Mr. Oshman has been the most vocal person on the planet regarding shifting the restaurant industry towards environmental sustainability. Mr. Oshman has been featured in hundreds of media stories, including Time Magazine, NBC Nightly News, NPR, CNN, Fox News, ABC, New York Times, and many more mainstream business and trade press. Mr. Oshman has met with the President's Council on Environmental Quality under President Clinton, and met with the EPA director under President Obama in 2015. So it is a great honor to have Michael Oshman with us here today. So I'd like to hand it over to Michael Oshman. Michael.
Thank you so much, Zach. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you, Jamie, for that wonderful presentation. Zach, thank you so much for inviting us here today. I'm going to be taking you quickly through this PowerPoint presentation, probably in a couple minutes. And then I want to really get into composting, compostables, and talk a little bit about what Zach's restaurant's doing, and McHenry with some cool details there. So I'm going to go through this really quickly. If you missed something, happy to share the deck with you guys later. So as Zach said, our mission is to shift the restaurant industry towards ecological sustainability. We were founded in 1990. We're an international nonprofit, primarily focused in North America. We have the largest database of green solutions for the restaurant industry. Science-based standards built from the ground up, most experience of any organization doing this, and thousands of media stories, as was mentioned. We work with the major contract food companies. We also work with major universities like Tufts, Princeton, UCLA, and corporations like Hearst, Samsung, American Express, down to your small mom and pops. We also have airport terminals, national monuments like Mount Rushmore, Muir Woods, and franchisees like McDonald's, Dunkin'. So Those are the big names. The majority of our restaurants are the ones you haven't heard of, the ones that are on your corner, that are independently owned. Why do restaurants come on board? As Zach said in the beginning, I'm pretty zealous about this issue, but I rarely talk to restaurants convincing them of the ethics of this, because they're not going to change because of that. They're going to change if I can convince them of the business stuff. So the more that we can figure out the business stuff together as a community, we don't have to talk about the ethics. The ethics are the reason why we do it, but they don't translate yet to every single business person. But dollars do. And so we focus on the electricity saved, the water saved, the waste saved, the money saved. This is for privacy, this restaurant's in here. These are real numbers. 79% of consumers prefer to dine at certified green restaurants. Just like Jamie said, look for certifications. So too, there's so much greenwashing going out. Everybody and their uncle is a green business today. And when you pick up that compostable product, you have no idea. There's great styrofoam, great quote unquote, that looks like it's biodegradable, but it's not. It's almost tricked my team. There's a lot of great marketing out there. You can't rely on that. So too consumers, they don't go and dig into Zach's restaurant and ask him to spend 3 hours to look through his, billing, nor does he probably want them to. But Zach does allow us to do that and to see what kind of products are purchased and if he's recycling and composting, and then the consumer gets to rely on us. And about 3/4 of consumers want to put their money where that value is. The way we start is environmental assessment to find out what the restaurant's doing on day one. And we look at it through the scope of energy, food, waste, chemicals, disposables, water, and building. 4 levels of certification, 4 stars is the highest. On the environmental assessment review, we determine where the restaurants are, what level they want to go to, and then we figure out what steps can be done. Is the restaurant composting? For our restaurants that are certified green restaurants, composting is a requirement, even in states where it's not. There are some states like Massachusetts or New York where there's composting legislation, but even where there's not, to have the brand of certified green restaurant, they need to be recycling, they need to be composting. We're going to help them make the changes to get to the certification level. And as much as we love our clients, we don't rely on them telling us that they're composting. We get a picture, we get a video, we talk to the vendors. Sometimes we come in person depending upon what's needed. The verification is important. Once the restaurant is certified, they get to put the logo on their menus, press releases, social media, staff training, and education. 94% of consumers trust a restaurant's green claims if they're certified, and 6% trust them if they are not. As we mentioned, lots of marketing. There's great ways to communicate on the windows and napkin holders, table tents. Here's a really cool document we created in the middle of the pandemic that said the average restaurant, any restaurants here, please take note of this. The average restaurant, just by changing their interface with Grubhub or Uber Eats, or their own training internally, both software and human, by asking the consumer, do you want a fork, knife, and spoon with your takeout and delivery? Okay, great. How many do you want? Because it might be that you need it, but you're bringing the rest home for your family, and they're going to actually use reusables once it gets home. So specific questions literally could save about $5,000 for an average restaurant, and a tremendous amount. There's not enough emphasis on the old cliche, reduce, reuse, then recycle / compost. I know we're talking about composting here, but composting and recycling should be the afterthought. They become the first thought in society. But the real issue is, how do we reduce it? How do we reuse it? It's a cliche. It's a cliche that we need to spend a lot more time integrating into our economy. Here's a wonderful top 10 that restaurants can communicate of what they're doing. Last couple slides talk about what the restaurants are doing that are represented here. Duke's Ale House has been certified since 2012 and is a 3-star certified green restaurant. We do have some 4 stars, but we probably have 24 stars around the country. 3 stars is like the highest that is reasonable for most restaurants to get, and Duke's Ale House is there at 207 green points. And as you can see, we get down to some very specifics of decimal points. So these energy steps represent scores of steps, as do the water, the waste, etc. So, and then we also have MCC Cafe at McHenry County College, also certified since 2016. Also a 3-star certified restaurant, 184, with the points and steps here. So that is the quick intro. To jump into the topic at hand today, we require, as I mentioned, composting and recycling. Within composting, the restaurants can compost, obviously the food. I held in my hand in 1997 in San Diego, soon after we started this organization, one of the first biodegradable plastics. And it was amazing. It really felt like, like a rocket ship to the moon. Like just, now we're all used to it, but it was crazy. Plastic was the evil thing in the restaurant industry, and it was going to be made out of corn. I was quite excited, as was the industry. As we've become a lot more sophisticated, there's an environmental impact of any product, including corn. And what we've also come to realize over the decades is that composting disposable products is a lot more complex than composting food. Composting food isn't so hard. For those of you who are not doing it, it needs to be implemented, but it's like recycling. Imagine anybody who grew up not recycling, and then all of a sudden, I could say for me, those blue bins showed up on the curbside. And then everybody on the block started to recycle back in the 90s or 80s and whenever that was. So they made it easy. Once you start composting the food, you know what goes in there, you know how to do it. It becomes just like throwing out the garbage used to be. With the compostable products, as Jamie mentioned, it can be quite complex because some of this stuff is legitimately compostable and mentioned some legitimate certifications like BPI, and some of the stuff is not. But then we have a middle ground of things that are legitimately compostable, but your composter still doesn't want them because it becomes more complex for them. Some composters love those compostable products that are legitimate. Some don't like them. Some will accept them. Some won't accept them. Some would accept them if they were all legitimate, but you're putting all the right products. But your neighbor across the way is not doing as good a job as you are. They're getting that, doggy bag thing that Jamie showed. They're giving the equivalent of like, look, I bought this thing. It's really great, but it's not. And because it's difficult to take the procurement of hundreds and thousands of restaurants and make sure they're all super educated. They're not all here today. You guys are here. Hopefully either know everything we're saying already or you'll know it by the time we're done to really look out. But to educate the whole industry is difficult. And these composters are in business for business. And unless they have a clean waste stream where everybody's got the BPI certified and it's legitimately compostable, etc., then it becomes a challenge. This is not to dissuade anybody. It's just this is one of the challenges that we've seen in the marketplace. The other challenge with compostables is a lot of people will buy compostables. And then you see that they're a takeout restaurant and you ask them where those compostables are going. And they say into the composting bin. And then we'll say, well, where are you? We're in New York, in Manhattan. Wonderful. Where do your customers live? Manhattan. Where do they generally live? Apartment buildings. Are they composting your product? No. Because those apartment buildings in New York or Chicago or LA or Boston, curbside composting with food and compostable disposables is not mainstream yet. So where we recommend the compostable products is in a closed loop system. So in a restaurant, back to the adage of reduce, reuse, recycle, in a restaurant, in 2022, if we want to solve these environmental issues, I'm just going to say it straight, we've got to move away from disposables in-house. It's just not sustainable. It is not sustainable to use a product that took the earth thousands and millions of years to produce, use it for 3 minutes, and then send it back into the environment for a very, very long time. No business would run that way. You would never spend 5,000 hours on a project and only use it for 2 seconds. Maybe a Super Bowl ad, where people pay $5 million for a 30-second ad. But for most things, if you're going to spend a lot of resources, it's going to be for a longer period of time. So in-house, we really need to move back to a place where restaurants are using reusables in-house. And then where do compostables come in? Let's say a stadium. So we greened the Super Bowl years ago, or a baseball or anything, baseball, football, anything, a concert, something where they're not ready to use reusables. It's just not practical yet, right? In that scenario, matching the procurement of proper compostable products that your composter wants at that stadium, not what's compostable in general, what your composter wants, because that's all that matters, is what that composter wants, which might be different than his competitor, which might be different than, what the norm is. If you can match the procurement in that scenario, then that's a great situation. We've had corporate cafeterias like that also. But really, we want reusables in-house, not compostables, not even the highest post-consumer recycled product. We want reusables. Couple more things. On the delivery side, there are some exciting things that can help us get away from single use. There are companies now, they're very small, they're very new, but they are coming out and they are reusable delivery services where you can call them up instead of Uber Eats, and you can go to X, you can say, yes, I want this restaurant. They will give you your food in a reusable, and they will show you how to do the return. It's very new. It's probably not in your area yet. It's popping up in New York a little bit, on the West Coast a little bit. It's an interesting model that helps us solve the problem of disposables, because again, even the best compostable, even the best recyclable product that is legitimate, the recycling rates are not fantastic, and we've been doing recycling forever. And composting is much newer. So the real goal is near zero waste. Some exciting news is we are upgrading our standards as we do every 5 years. And we're going to be launching our new standards this year, possibly this quarter, if not the beginning of next quarter. And with that, we are launching a near zero waste badge, which focuses highly on reusables and really getting a restaurant to zero waste. We don't use that term zero waste because there's always something. But near zero waste is an achievable thing. There literally a restaurant could have, and that doesn't just mean everything going to recycling and composting. It means dramatically reducing the amount of single-use items in back of house and front of house. Finally, for those restaurants that are on board, we're doing some fun stuff in New York and Florida with a concept called a green dining destination. We're partnering with the Madison Square Conservancy and a business improvement district, and literally the marketing arm of the city of New York, to create a green dining destination, which is to get about 20 restaurants in a small geography that are hitting the level of certified green restaurant. So that just like when you want to go for Chinese food, you don't have to go to a Chinatown, but if you do, our office in downtown Boston is like walking distance from Chinatown until we got rid of our office a few months ago. But our office is 15 years. And if you want to have good Chinese food in Boston, you're going to have a plethora of options there. Green dining destinations like that. You go to this geography and you could dine green in this geography with lots of options. And that also helps with procurement because you have a lot of restaurants in a small area who are all buying the right things, and then you can organize waste haulers and procurement. So got a lot to say, but I'll put a bookmark there. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you so much, Michael. That was awesome. And I even learned a few things in your talk. That's really cool to see how things are constantly changing and progressing, and for the better. And to really keeps me excited, from me starting our certification, 12 years ago to where everybody is coming today, and where the Green Restaurant Association, where EcoProducts has come. It's really cool to see how multiple people and facilities and everyone working together to really to create a better tomorrow and become more sustainable. I do want to make sure that we address a lot of questions during this talk. I know that it's already been quite a day and there's been a lot of information coming out, but the most that we're going to get from this is hearing from you and, talking a little bit about what you're doing currently as restaurants and what questions you have for becoming more sustainable. And then ultimately at the end of this, we want to come up with some goals for our group here. We're also going to try to initiate those goals throughout our county. And then we do plan on hosting a meeting with food and drink later this year, kind of a follow-up discussion for this meeting, because we couldn't meet in person today, and I feel that that is the best way of connecting, obviously. So we're sorry we weren't able to buy everybody lunch today, but we are going to provide a follow-up where we can meet in person and discuss things more, as well as I will mention some other opportunities. And I hope everybody also got their welcome packet, because we do have a lot of great resources in there, as well as contact information for Michael and Jamie. If you want to ask them something more drawn out or specific to you, I'm sure they'll be happy to answer your questions. So if everybody wants to either raise their hand if they want to talk in person, I'd love to see your faces, but if not, please post your questions to the chat box. And Michael or Jamie, if you want to pick up the questions as they get asked, that's fine with me. Otherwise, I will direct them further. And if we run out of questions, I have a whole ton that I can ask as well. So, but don't be shy. We start with any questions that you have. Okay, I'm just looking in the chat box myself. So
there was one question, Zach. It said, what's the first step to getting certified? What is the process like?
Oh, okay. Well, that one is directly for Michael. So I'll give him the mic.
Okay. So the first step to getting certified is the restaurant contacts us. We get to know the restaurant, how many units, what the size, etc. Once we start working together, we do that environmental assessment. So we don't like to give solutions without knowing who you are. There's the objective of who you are, which is, are you composting? Is it working well? Because if it is, we're not going to waste our time and your time telling you how to create a great composting program. We're going to find out all the good things you're doing by going through a whole assessment process. Again, pictures, walkthrough, etc. Once we know what steps you've done, you get a score, you get a baseline. Then we find out how close that is to level 1, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star. So that's your point A at the GPS. Then we want to see what your point B is. Do you want to go for level 1? Do you want to go for 2-star, 3-star, or maybe even 4-star? Then that differential gives us our path of where we're going. Just like in a GPS, there are many ways to get there. You could take the side streets, you could take the freeway, you could take the most energy efficient way if you've got an electric car. There's many different ways to get there. And so we're going to figure out what the restaurant wants to do. We're going to give our suggestions of the quickest, fastest, easiest way, just like the GPS will, and say, okay, these 10 steps are going to get you to a 2-star. That was your goal. Then we start working with your waste haulers, helping you with signage, helping you with training, making it so you can learn from the thousands of restaurants that have gone before you, so you don't create a great program but have poor signage so that it just doesn't work well. So we're going to interface with the waste haulers, with the vendors. If we want you to get a better recycled napkin, for example, we're going to work with the distributor that you're working with. We're going to make that all happen with you, with your current distributors and your current products. If you want to go to a different distributor for whatever reason, we'll work with them also. And then once those new steps are there, we get those verified, and then the restaurant certified, the PR and marketing kick in, and we also do the staff training, etc. And then there is a recertification process that also needs to happen down the line, so that in 2022, we're making sure that we've got new and fresh information, and in 2023. So that's the nutshell. The first thing is contact us and get to know you. And the other part is the personality piece. We have some restaurants like, just get me to the minimum as quickly and easy as possible. I don't really care about this issue, but I know my consumers and employees care. Okay, thank you for being honest. You're doing this for your consumers and your employees. We will keep that in mind. We will not talk shop with you of how exciting this is environmentally. But it could be that the restaurant owner or the manager who's doing this really is excited about these issues. That's important for us to know because our team will then engage them. Are they doing this for money, saving money? Are they doing this because half their employees are asking for it, because consumers are asking for it, because the state's about to knock on the door with legislation? So when we know their angle, it doesn't necessarily change so much what we do, but it helps us to do the approach that works for that restaurant.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, I can attest to that the certification process, while it's got to be unique to everyone. So there's no like cut and dry answer. That's what we've noticed, and talking with other restaurants in the past. So it's really just starting the conversation with the Green Restaurant Association. They're there to help, but a lot of the stuff you already know. I mean, for us, the biggest thing that we did was we knew, getting certified does come with a cost, but doing as much as you can before calling them so that you're ready with what you have, that helped us, speed up the process. That'd be my pointers as a restaurant, but after getting certified, we have not shied away from continuing our certification with them. They've been a huge help in helping us with any questions we have with becoming more sustainable. So they are a huge resource for us as well. Is there questions in the chat that I missed?
Yes, there we have a couple of questions in the chat. So Kim asked, or said, the cafe at MCC is still using single-use plastic silverware because of COVID. Suggestions to help me convince them to go back to reusables.
I guess, Jamie, do you want to handle that? I know Kim is also on this call. I don't want to throw her under the bus a little bit. I know that. Jamie, do you want to answer or address the question of the plastics?
I mean, it sounds like she wants to go to reusables. I'd say the only thing that they'd want to check on is your local health department. Sometimes there's specifications that they require around that so I don't know, that might be one reason that they're not doing it.
I think that there's a lot of challenges right now.
There are. So I mean,
recently,
I would always encourage them to go to reusables. The next step would be compostable.
And of course, bringing your own silverware.
Yeah.
I know that's not the answer everybody wants to hear.
Well, that's the challenges. I know that some health departments aren't allowing people to use reusables.
Yeah, there's that too. But go on to the next question.
Yes. So next question was the cost of the process, which I think we kind of touched on a little bit earlier, but I don't know if there's any specific structure for the cost for the Green Restaurant Association.
Yeah, sure. Regarding the reusables, what I would say is everything needs to work in its context. This pandemic will pass. We're just being very patient with our restaurants. It's just been a traumatic experience for the whole planet. And for restaurants, one day they're open, next day they're not. One day they can eat in, the next day they're only takeout. One day there's this regulation. So, although we have this ideal, we're going to get back to it. I would just say, very soon, I think we'll be hopefully getting back to some more normalcy. And in that, I think many of our restaurants made temporary changes to adapt. And I think they will go back. I don't think there's any reason to assume that these are long-term trends. I think the trend is towards reusable. So onto the cost thing, it really varies, and I don't want to spend 10 minutes talking about it, but I would say, If we're like the average restaurant who grosses around 600,000 a year can come on board for about 900 or 925 for the year. If a restaurant does like a monthly thing for a longer term contract, it'd be like $55 a month or $58, somewhere in that ballpark. So for most restaurants, it's pretty reasonable.
Thank you, Mike.
Yes. Okay. So moving on to our other question. Peter asked, is there an agency that certifies grocery stores?
Well, Michael, I'm sure you can answer that. Yeah.
Yeah. There are certifications for hotels. There's a lot of certifications for service-oriented businesses. A lot of people said we should do grocery stores. We don't. We will do delis within grocery stores. I don't think I mean, I probably would know. This is what I do every day for the past 31 years. I founded the organization. So I could say pretty confidently there's nothing prominent that I know of that does what we do for grocery stores. Having said that, you know, if a grocery store is looking for certification, it might be out of luck in that way. But there's no lack of consultants. So even though it wouldn't be us, you know, there's plenty of consulting firms around the country that could help a grocery store achieve the similar goals as we would help for a restaurant.
Well put. I just want to add for Peter, I mean, even if there isn't anyone on this call that specifically certifies grocery stores or is an expert for grocery stores, the waste reduction team with the Defenders can easily be a resource. Even after the summit today, we can always touch base and try to get you in the right direction and just get started. That's definitely something that we have talked about in a plethora of other meetings that we've had. So feel free to reach out to one of us and we can help you out.
Yeah. And as long as like a restaurant has a retail food operation, like a Whole Foods, we would certify that kind of an operation. As long as you can go in and get lunch or get dinner, we'll work with that place. If it's a conventional grocery store and doesn't have that, we won't work with them. But as long as there is prepared food, somebody can take it out or eat it, we would help them.
Hey, Michael, do you know if the True certification would encompass any of those, that certification program through the US Green Building?
I'm not sure. Through the US Green Building Program or through another organization?
It's an offshoot of that program, and it's called True certification.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if it's specific to, I thought it was open to business types.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have some questions for the attendees here to kind of find out what everyone is doing. What are some of the least eco-friendly items in your restaurant or business? Not sure if anybody wants to chime in and answer some of these for us. I'm sure other people have the same issues. So, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult actually doing it, especially through the pandemic, because, you know, a lot of us need dome lids, and then the different sizes don't fit on the different cups, which is always like the most frustrating thing on earth. So we have probably half a storage unit filled with cups that don't have lids and vice versa as we're going through this. And I'm sure you do too, Zach. It's so difficult. But I think for us, soda spoons, we can't find them compostable, and we go through a ton of them. And we've been doing things like, you know, using a lot of metal stuff, you know, just in the process of making it, you know, because we used to throw away a ton of plastic, cleaning it up there. I think straws are always difficult because when you get the giant straws, which are the largest ones that you use in shakes and for smoothies and stuff, they come so long because they're made for like smoothie chains, and we need them just for regular cups, which is very frustrating as well because we'll order them and then the customers will complain and and ask us to cut them with scissors, you know, so thanks
Good
for
for
the
you.
the BPI stuff. But I think the biggest waste that we get are when we get stuff coming to us from our, you know, it's hard enough to find like good quality dairy and other things that are made locally, but they come in a lot of like single-use plastic things. And I'm just wondering, how do we help our suppliers, you know, get better? Because we throw away so much plastic that you can't recycle, that the dairy comes in. And I know, you know, our supplier also supplies for all the Dairy Queens and everybody, and they're throwing away all this plastic. It seems like trying to pressure these guys might be a nice way, or pressuring the chains that we're competing against, I think is an even better idea, because those guys use so much around the country and we see their stuff. It's just, we see it in our parking lot and it doesn't break down and they're not doing the right thing at all. So I don't know. That's what's frustrating about this whole thing. So much cheaper.
I just wanted to jump in there real quick, Peter. I think that you had a lot of good things to say, and that touches on, you know, a couple great aspects about what we're doing here. I mean, we're having an open conversation, and you know, in regards to how do you combat all the plastic waste with, you know, with your suppliers. I think this is a great opportunity for like restaurants to kind of put pressure on your suppliers. You know, I mean, a lot of good things that have this kind of stuff is, you know, leveraging for better pricing and stuff as a group, using just like that purchasing or group leverage, really, because it's not just you telling your supplier that, hey, you want, you know, them to work on this. It's all of the people that are getting it from them. So I think you hit the nail on the head there, that that's a huge component of all of this. It's not just, you know, individual restaurants doing their little bits here and there. It's together as a whole. We need to put pressure on ourselves and up the chain too.
Yeah, absolutely. We forget, you know, about all the, you know, the waste that just comes into the building to even just be able to serve our products sometimes. And, you know, we've even given farmers, we bought containers to give to the farmer that they can use to bring their supplies over in. And then there's other farmers that we've worked with locally that they won't, you know, use boxes that don't have the wax coating on it so that we can recycle it. So, you know, it runs the gamut with asking them to make these changes. But, you know, I think, you know, the biggest thing that I can say is, you know, supporting the businesses that are doing the right things. I know, you know, that Testa is doing some great things, but they're one of the more expensive companies in our area, you know, to be able to get products from. But, you know, we've had to make some sacrifices on cost, you know, without even sometimes even getting a better product, but knowing that they practice more eco-friendly methods. So there's always a lot to weigh out when trying to figure out how to green what comes into the building, you know, even so. But yeah, I think, you know, hopefully, you know, just like Michelle said, that we're going to be able to, you know, come together as a group and demand this of our suppliers. And, you know, and I remind everybody too that this is recorded and we can share with other restaurants that weren't able to make this. So connecting with more people and being passionate, like yourself, Peter, and Julianne's Ice Cream. I mean, it's, you know, it's great having a plethora of locations that are already doing these things, and that's going to help us gain momentum and continue to strive forward. Jamie, do you have any thing, you know, to mention? Do you do any products for suppliers, or is that you just do the containers for restaurants?
What do you, you're talking about? I think you're talking about more like different types of packaging that would be out of the realm of food service ware. Is that correct?
Yeah, I didn't know if EcoProducts did anything for, or if it was just focused on.
Not currently, or we're primarily focused on food service ware.
Okay.
Zach, before you jump into your other questions, I just noticed that there is one other question in the chat. Someone said, we are a small pop-up kitchen focusing on meal delivery. What are my options for certification?
All right, Michael.
So we certify anywhere from MetLife Stadium and multi-billion-dollar companies down to small food trucks, and some of whom are actually cooking in their homes, or so they are the same as everybody else's. The only difference is the likelihood of you getting to 4-star is much less likely, simply because there's less things that you're doing. Which is fine. Most restaurants don't get to 4 stars. So there's just more of a limit of how many things you could do, but we've had very small operations that can get certified. And every place, a truck has its own needs. The likelihood that, a truck is going to use reusables is a little bit more difficult than a sit-down restaurant, for example. Unless that truck is there every day and half their customers are sitting out in their patio next to the truck. So we get to kind of know the particular nuances of your place, but it's completely doable.
Hey, Zach,
Yeah.
sorry to butt in. Do you think we have enough restaurants in our county to do the green dining initiative that Michael was talking about before?
I think that our county is very active in drawing people to it. I think that you and the other businesses maybe that are already here need to group together and convince some more places to become green. And I think that we're going to have to do some of the work for the GRA, I think, in that respect, and for EcoProducts. And I was hoping that some of these conversations would be initiated here. But yeah, I absolutely I love the energy and drive of doing that. I'm always a big proponent of that. Let's take action. What can we do today to not only drive business and sales, but make people realize how the great things our county is doing. So I guess that's a long answer, but I think that you probably not there yet, but I think that we've got to make that happen for sure. I agree.
The number I threw out, 20, is also not hard and fast. We were talking New York. So if we do a smaller geography, the number could be smaller. So that's something we could figure out. And also the nice thing is you start and you get a handful. In New York, we literally have the marketing arm of the city of New York. I mean, you've seen their marketing, and they're excited about this. Why?
Yeah.
Because it's good for the brand of New York City. So we've gotten, we've gotten excitement from the mayor of Asheville, North Carolina. Once it gets going and there's a handful of restaurants, it hasn't been so difficult to get political leaders, conventioners and visitors bureau. And then they start saying, well, we're going to publicize the green dining destination, all the certified green restaurants here and here and here. And then all of a sudden you have this fear of missing out because it's not a concept. You're doing it. Now there's 10 restaurants doing it. It becomes easier to get the other 10 because they realize this is going to happen, and somebody's going to be talking about the great products that they're using in the restaurant and the great energy efficiency and the great cleaning chemicals. And this one reduced their waste by 70%, and this one reduced their waste by 95%. And which side of the news story does your restaurant want to be on? The one that's not on the news that night, or the one that's actually doing the right thing? So there's a lot more that could be discussed, but it's an exciting thing, because when Zach, you're doing it by yourself, it's you and my team. And it's good, and you're making a great impact, or McHenry, or any restaurant doing it, but it's us and you. When we get a group together, it creates a pressure on the other restaurants, and it also becomes easier for you guys because, let's say, Zach, you really wanted that great napkin and we couldn't get it for you, and they only had the second best napkin, your distributor. Well, now your distributor wants to carry it because 15 other restaurants are asking for it. And so there's a lot of positives.
Yeah, I love that.
I think the same holds true to the infrastructure part with, Zach and you and I were talking about this too, is bringing the same situation to the hauling companies. You know, once we get a group of you together and we can show, okay, look at all these clients that want it, so it's good for you. And then the composter, the same process that Michael was talking about in terms of getting the infrastructure piece in place.
Yeah, I do. I think another question popped up, but I do want to ask some questions about the composting as well.
Do you want to answer the question in the chat first, or?
Yeah, is there a self-assessment list on things to work on? This one's directed towards Michael. Peter asked once again, how he can start checking out some things on your list by himself.
Okay, so there's a couple free resources I could direct you to. One of them, if you go to dyinggreen.com and just look at our certification standards. Under the certification standards, you'll see water, you'll see energy, you'll see waste, and then in each of those categories, you'll see an oven, a hood, or under waste, recycling, composting. So you could see all those things. For most people, it's going to give them it's too much information. It's like 700 things you can do. But by all means, go in there and you can look at those things. The second thing you could do is we have this free online test. It is not a certification, because it would be greenwashing if it was, because somebody clicking a bunch of buttons at 11 o'clock at night doesn't make a certification. But it is a fun, free tool for you to answer some questions and go. It gives you like a starting point with your managers, with the people in your restaurant. Like, oh, I answered to the best of my ability, and this is where we would be as a starting point. So those are two fun things. We also have the education section. So those are the education section is more on the educational side, where the other two are practical. But I would just also say that as much as possible, we encourage restaurants to make the changes with us. If they're going to work with us. If they're not going to work with us, then obviously they should do their best to make them on their own and get as educated as possible, so they don't end up getting that wonderful biodegradable styrofoam and realize it's not biodegradable or compostable. But if they are going to work with us, we encourage it to do it sooner rather than later. Why? Because we could save the client a lot of time. When a restaurant's looking for the best recycled napkin, they don't know what the best recycled napkin is, because it's not what they do every day. So they're going to spend hours and hours and hours and hours, and then they're going to find it, and then they're going to find out if their distributor carries it. Where for us, we can say, you don't need to search any further. There's not a better one than 90% post-consumer waste, processed chlorine-free, blah, blah, blah. Or if you want the white fluffy one, there's the highest post-consumer waste is X, and here's the company, and here's the product number, and let's share that with your distributors. So because we do this every day, it A, can save the restaurant time, and two, it can keep the average restaurateur, who, thank God, our clients are very intelligent. It's just not what they do every day. So it's easier. Like, we literally have had, we've had restaurateurs a lot in New York who are basically throwing their food waste down the drain. And although that's great in terms of keeping stuff out of the landfill, it really isn't using all those nutrients and resources turned back into soil, back into food. And they're not going to take Jamie's products either down the drain. So it's not like a solution for the disposables, and it's not a great solution for the food. Why am I spending a minute telling you that? Because it sounds fantastic. It sounds like a great green solution. So we literally have had restaurants who spend $8,000, $10,000 getting these things. They call us up like, I got this thing, I'm ready for the GRA. And we have to tell them, it's kind of being thrown down the drain. We really need those resources being used. Now, it's not just about keeping stuff out of landfills, it's taking those resources and using them again. So that's why we suggest restaurants work with us as soon as possible, because it saves, if you're going to work with us, because it saves you time for solutions you would have gotten anyways on your own, and it also saves you the pain of possibly going for solutions that aren't solutions.
Yeah, I know I had mentioned earlier that we had we had waited a little bit, and it is scary making the investment, but I can attest that, we did make some mistakes and learned a lot, just by, we had done some things thinking that we were practicing the best green methods, and we really weren't. And we learned a heck of a lot, just by starting with the Green Restaurant Association. So, but I also will say that they're there every step of the way. So, it will be an investment in the beginning, and it is a ton of work, but I think all good things are. So, this is, a great time for all of us to become a little bit greener. I know just in setting up this summit and talking with people, that the amount of stuff I learned and things that I thought that I was doing great, just in the past couple of weeks have been, could be done better. So it's a constant learning process. So, and having a resource like the Green Restaurant Association there, and EcoProducts as well, to be able to, direct us to those best products. And it's very customizable to each restaurant. So it's not like you can come to me and be like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I serve, burgers and sandwiches, and, and you're serving ice cream. It's a completely different set of challenges for each business. So, the Green Restaurant Association and EcoProducts, and Melissa's on this call as well, are going to be great resources for you guys to start being more green. I haven't heard from many other people in this. I'm hoping that, they may have something to contribute over these next couple of questions. I do want to talk a little bit about, steer a little bit more towards composting, especially since composting is available for everyone to be able to use. I want to find out if anybody is already using composting, or the reasons why they haven't. Does anybody want to chime in, or just let us know that you already are composting? I was hoping that would help a little bit. I know. So recently there was a bunch of questions about Prairie Land, because they do take compost. And recently with our location, they have stopped taking the compostable plastics and paper. And we had been composting with them for several years, and they got bought out by a larger company who I was hoping was going to join us today, but we can definitely follow up after this if anybody wants to ask him some specific questions. His contact info is in the welcome packet. But in discussing the compost, some real eye-opening things, and just not being able to recycle things that we have on our dining room floor. I know Michael definitely pushed towards using reusables, but in every establishment it's gonna be a little different. So for us, an example that I bring up, and I'm sure everybody has one of these examples, is we use little tiny souffle cups made out of paper, and our compost companies, Prairie Land is no longer accepting those, probably due to the fact that there's contaminations of products that aren't compostable that look like that. So it's kind of been a pain in the butt for them to sort that out. But we have that challenge. If I was to switch to reusable cups for that, the amount that would get thrown in the garbage, like our silverware and stuff, we have protections in place to prevent that from happening, but it does happen, and it can be really expensive. So using those little paper 2-ounce cups seems like a viable solution. We did try using, the steel, 2-ounce cups for the size of ketchup and everything, but it really wasn't price conscious for us. So we've had to work on solutions. The reason I bring all of that up is that, now that these compost haulers are not allowing that type of waste to enter the waste stream, it makes it very challenging for us to use the dining room waste, which accounts for a large percentage of the waste in our restaurant. Unfortunately, people don't finish their meals. They forget their to-go containers. They ask for things that they don't end up needing. Even the napkins that go on the plates, simple paper napkins, even though they're post-consumer recycled, they're not accepted, now for composting. So those little things are unavoidable for a restaurant, some restaurants, as far as waste and finding a reusable product that they can do price consciously. So what, as a group and as as a county of restaurants, I think we need to figure out ways of discussing with our waste haulers as to how we can drive and steer them to start composting those products. I think Jamie can get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty and the challenges of that specifically, and why the compost haulers aren't taking those materials at this time, and maybe provide us with some steps and ways of communicating that to our waste haulers and demanding that they start taking those products again.
Oh, you want the abbreviated version?
Yes, let's go with abbreviated. Yes.
Another one of those complex issues. So in your county, the main challenge with the closest site, who is excellent, by the way, is this OMRI certification. So it's not that they couldn't accommodate those products. It's just going to take some work on us as a group to just show the business case, not only like I was talking about earlier to the haulers, but the composters, which is pretty easy coming from that world. And we had kind of talked about that when we had met with Tom. Was it Tom from Prairieland?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
There's resources that I can bring to help facilitate some of those conversations, just showing them the business case and coming to them as a group, showing, like, okay, hey, here we have a group, we have a vetted group of customers, they're all doing the right thing with procurement. So this is, like Michael was saying, this is a closed loop system. We're not in the business of trying to bring you a problem. We have this group of accounts. We know that they're all using our compostable products. Let's give it a shot. Here's the business case. We can get you route density, which is one of the primary issues for haulers, is they've got to have route density, and it's not that easy. And so what happens is it's not real lucrative at the start. So I know I always worked in private haulers. It was a lot easier because their mission was more closely aligned. Whereas with a big hauler, it really takes a lot of volume and, again, a lot of demand from the consumer to get them off of their laurels and start a compost route. Not to mention that they've got landfills that they want to fill. So just bringing those business cases and advocating with the haulers, with the composters, showing them that it is doable. It's a closed loop system. We could start with a pilot program, prove out the concept, and add folks, as we go. We were talking a little bit about some other creative solutions that there might be in the absence of a willing composter, but there are actually some systems that are solar, kind of off the grid programs where, if we could get enough stakeholders behind it, we need only a half acre of land to be able to implement an aerated static pile. This is kind of like my pie in the sky dream, but it's a type of composting that only would take a half acre. It could accommodate a number of stakeholders, and we could get it going. And then hopefully what happens is the local composters or the haulers are like, hey, it's the FOMO that you were talking about, the fear of missing out. And it's like, they're going to be getting the clients because this is what the clients are wanting and demanding all the way down the chain. So I guess we better throw our hat into the ring.
Yeah, I always love the solutions that are like, well, if you're not going to help us, then we're going to do it on our own. I love that. We discussed even that option. It's, I think it's cool. It's going to take people thinking outside the box like that, to push it forward themselves. And, I think, people like Peter and other people hopefully on this call are going to be, behind something like that. If we can't get these waste haulers to do it, then maybe we can find our own way of making of composting the compostable cups and things like that ourselves. Does anybody have any questions or comments on composting?
I have a question, I guess, for the general group is, what are the barriers for you guys that aren't currently composting at, on site or using the food waste pickup from your current haulers? Is there a specific obstacle or a series of obstacles that you guys are facing? Zach, maybe you can call on someone.
It looks
Can you
like
hear
Jen's
me?
coming in. Yeah, hi Jen.
Can you hear me? That's a very good question. So I'm down here at Elgin Community College in the culinary department. And I think we're very much just getting started with the whole sustainability program, and composting will be a part of it, of course. And I think one of our biggest challenges is just getting all the instructors on board. We have several different classrooms. It's a little bit different than a restaurant, but several different classrooms, and we need everybody to buy into it. And that's, some are on board, some are not. Some are going to be told they have to. And I guess I'm looking for material. Do we have to tell us what goes into the compost and what goes into recycling? And because we are a school, so I think that I need to educate them before I'm expecting them to be fully on board. But I haven't researched a lot yet, but it doesn't, I want it to be as simple and as easy for them to get on board and have as few excuses as possible of why they're not doing this. So I guess that's been my experience so far, is just a little bit of pushback from others, and you could say other staff members that just are really not buying into this. And their biggest argument is it's not really going to where it's supposed to be going anyhow. How do you know that it's actually getting composted? How do you know our efforts are actually making a difference?
Yeah, those are great questions. And yeah, I think both of our speakers would like to chat on that a little bit. We'll start with Michael on this one, and then we'll go to you, Jamie.
I think you just touched on a really important piece, Jen, which is confidence. I mean, we've heard it, and sometimes it's unfounded, and we've heard it, and often it is founded, that concern. And when people are doing the right thing, whether it's a disposable product, whether it's composting or recycling, and they think they're doing the right thing, maybe they're saving money, maybe they're paying more, and it's not, it's awful. Try to get those people, like I would rather a restaurant wait 6 months and do it right than do it now, because you're gonna blow the confidence of everybody. And we haven't talked so much of it. We talked about certification, Jamie and I guess that is that confidence piece. That is a really important part. But even again, when you have the right BPI product or you're doing the resource, whatever it is, if the composter is not sending it to the right place, or they are but nobody knows it, that's a problem. So then I would say that's where education comes in. So for us, what we would do is, let's say we had a restaurant that really wanted to do it, and there were 3 composters in the community. We would want to make sure to have a composter there with a good reputation that wasn't filmed on the TV news 2 months ago, dumping the composting. Or if they did have a negative reputation, but it was unfounded, then we would want to educate the staff in that restaurant, saying, you know what, it's a great concern. It really shows a high level of integrity, that if you're going to do something, you want it to be real. Well, let us share with you what we know about this company. This is the research we've done. This is how long they've been in business. They have 4 trucks. They all go to this particular compost place. And if there's a real concern, we can even do a small audit and go, okay, compost place, do you really get X amount of tons of food waste from this hauler? Yeah, about that. Okay. Well, the compost place has no incentive to say that because they're a separate business unless they're really doing that. So there are ways to mitigate that, and that's through education. But if those employees are right, and there really isn't a proper composting infrastructure in that community that's going to do it, then it is better not to do it. It is much better to not do it than to do it, because a lot of people have the thing of like, oh, but let's at least train people to do it right, and eventually the right composters will come and everybody's trained. But what we found out, psychologically, that doesn't work because everybody doesn't trust it. It's like the crying wolf. By the time it's real, nobody trusts it. I also want to say one more thing is that I spoke incorrectly before when I said that we require composting in every restaurant. We require composting in every restaurant where there's an infrastructure. So if you're in the middle of a community and there's no composter there, that restaurant can still become a certified green restaurant. They just have to recycle everything. And we define composting infrastructures basically if there's competition. If there are 2 or more composters, we will require it. If there's only one, we will encourage it and we will help the restaurant do it. But why do we only require when there's 2? Because once there's competition, there's less likely to be monkey business. There's more likely to be proper pricing, etc. So that level of transparency is an important piece, but it is something that can be dealt with.
And Jen, too, just to be clear, were you looking for some changes to or information that you can provide to your staff before you start the program, or are you looking, for how, what are you specifically looking for?
I guess it's twofold, and Michael answered a lot, but I think material is another thing that I am looking for, something to help me educate, which is key, obviously. I think one of our big pushes here in the department is we really want to train the students so that when they go out into the industry, they've got a little bit of knowledge about reduce, reuse, recycle, composting, all of that. Knowledge is power, and if I need material to back that up, so teach them how to do it correctly.
I mean, that we just had a corporate cafeteria with 28 or 29 employees, and they all just went through our education program. We have an online test for it. One person had to take it 10 or 11 times before they passed, but they did it. And that person who took it 10 or 11 times somehow by the end got educated. And so, that's a big part of what we do, is to make sure that the employees are educated, or in the place of a school, if the school wants to educate the consumers, the students. So that's with us. I would say if it's not with us, the best thing that you could do would be to actually find out who the composters are and ask them the tough questions yourself. Where do you take it? How do I assure my employees that you're actually taking it there? Have you ever had an issue where it hasn't been taken there? And if you get really good detailed information, it's probably more likely to be true. If they give you a nice glossy brochure and they don't give you detailed information, that's a place to dig deeper.
Thank you.
Jamie, do you have anything to add?
I was just gonna say, I probably can get with you offline and connect you with some different universities in the area and share some resources that they're using. I know Illinois State was having a similar lunch and learn on the 28th. I haven't checked in to see how it went, but it was all the staff, students, just the same thing that you're talking about, providing education about why they're wanting to go in this direction and the benefits. And they do have a composter there. They're in Bloomington Normal, and there is a composter there that does take packaging as well as the food waste. I was just curious, are they giving you pushback about just food waste?
No, and food waste is just part of it. It's just,
Okay.
my biggest pushback, honestly, is the tasting spoons. And I mentioned that in the
Yeah.
chat. I've never seen anything like it before. They're using a single-use spoon and throwing it in the trash and using it again and again. And it's just, we go through 10 to 20 cases of tasting spoons. And I'd like to get them back to the metal, but of course we've got COVID-19, but it's driving me crazy. So that's probably the biggest pushback. But when we start the sustainability, changing the department over, composting is going to be a big part of it. And I'm wondering, I'm going to get all that pushback from that as well.
And I would say that, like Michael said on the timing, like you're not that far from the organic site. And once they do give the green light on accepting compostables, then you could look at using some of those other materials and kind of phase in as you go.
Yeah. For
Bless
sure.
you on this project, Jen. Good for you for taking it
Thank
on. Yeah.
Jen,
Yeah, Jen,
if I could-
Kim has a comment.
I
Yeah.
just wanted to jump in for a second, and you and I were talking a little bit in the chat too, that our way in when we instituted this at McHenry County College, and we had to do it so we would get our green restaurant certification. So we put our composting program together. We started obviously with the cafe back of house mostly, but we're the students, the culinary students themselves. We went after the student environmental club and had them go talk to the culinary students. And all of a sudden, everybody wanted compost buckets on their station. And I was happy to make that happen, and we put that in case. So a lot of times students don't realize the power of their voice, but it's pretty amazing. We also worked a lot with Julie Schilf a long time ago. She had a lot of information for us, and I'm happy to share whatever. We have these little table tents. We have all sorts of stuff, so I'm happy to share whatever I've got with you too.
Wonderful.
Thanks,
you.
Kim. Is there any more questions I missed in the?
There's a bunch of other comments in here on the same topic of obstacles. Someone, Scott had said that we are also located in a heavily wooded area with plenty of critters that have chewed holes in our dumpster lids to get at food scraps. What kind of containers are provided to discourage pests as far as the food waste pickup? And I think I thought there was another section too where they asked about what is the compost pickup schedule typically?
So for us, our pickup schedule, you can, it's like regular garbage, like a regular garbage company would come in and pick it up. So you can schedule it. Obviously the cost is going to change on how often and how big your containers are. So everybody's sizes of their dumpster area obviously vary a lot. So, talking with the waste hauler to see what's going to work with you. And organics, that's spelled with an X, they're taking food scraps, and Prairie Land, owned by LRS, is also taking food scraps right now. So you do have those two options still. So you can use either one of those. As far as the bins, you can get different locks for the containers just like you would a normal dumpster. Some of the restaurants just use the rollaway containers that you'd see on the curbside. Usually those, as long as the lid is down, is tough enough for critters to get in, but animals chewing through that, those are some pretty intense animals and very hungry animals apparently. So but yeah, I think the waste haulers want to work with you to eliminate any sort of contaminants getting in there. So it benefits them to make sure that those lids aren't open, not only by critters and pests, but people dumping garbage that are just walking by in the wrong container can be really frustrating for you or the waste hauler. So for when we start training new people, I definitely tell them to even start taking pictures of the dumpsters at the ends of their shift, so that making sure that they're putting things in the right containers. So there's a lot of hurdles when you do start composting, but all of them are avoidable.
Zach, can I comment on that?
Yeah, please do.
So couple things for critters and money. On the money side, make sure that when you do composting, when you add composting, make sure you take away the waste hauling bins. It seems logical, but if you're putting a ton into composting, it means you now have a ton less going to the landfill. And if some of your waste haulers will continue picking up with the regular schedule on the waste hauling because they're going to make more money. But many of our clients will actually save money overall because the economics for composting are better. They've got a product they can give away for free or sell, whereas garbage you have to pay to dump. So just keep in mind, it's simple math. If you're filling up a bin this much of compost, then reduce your garbage pickup from 4 times to 3 times because you don't need that 4th one anymore. If you're doing 2 of these, then reduce it by 2. So, be conservative though. You don't want to have too little of this. Better to scale from 4 to 3, see where you are, 3 to 2. Last thing you want to do is go to 2 and you have no place for your garbage. So scale down slowly. That's one thing. I had a personal experience with critters eating through a home composting bin many years ago in a wooded area in Massachusetts. And there is a market for garbage bins that are critter resistant based upon what kind of critter it is. So there are bins on the market because critters will go right through certain bins, and especially if there's delicious compostable food in there and there's no cardboard, there's nothing else, and it's just food. So there's a solution for that, but you'd have to make sure your waste hauler wants those kind of bins, etc.
That's some great expertise on that. Jamie, do you want to chime in at all on any of the? I know you were
reiterating that you need to be diligent with the hauler because many of them don't get it, or they're not inclined, I guess, to lose revenue on their trash, and they'll keep it. So keep it where it was, like Michael was saying. So you got to make sure that you're reducing. And again, I'm super lucky in my area because we have such high trash taxes that people can actually save tons of money. And in Ramsey County here in Minnesota, the garbage taxes are 70%. So by diverting this trash into a compost, which is a non-taxable recycling stream, they're saving tons of money, which unfortunately landfill heavy areas of the country aren't necessarily that scenario, and it might be a similar cost to do either composting versus waste hauling. But yeah, you have to be diligent because they're not going to proactively come to you and say, hey, I noticed that your bin's only half full, and that's why I only work for independent haulers. Nothing against the large ones, just not my cup of tea, and wanting to do the right thing for the end user. If their bin is only half full, then they should be reducing their pickup.
All right. I want to make sure that, I really, first of all, I want to thank both of our panelists for attending today. And I apologize that Lakeshore Recycling Systems was not able to make it. But thank you so much, Jamie and Michael, for providing such fantastic insight and resources for these dedicated individuals that are really trying to make their businesses greener. So a round of applause for you guys. And then I also want to make sure that we touch on making some goals, that we have some accountability for each other. I think that's going to be the most important thing. If any of these discussions that we have and any discussions I've ever been on is, the follow-up is the most important thing. And, I think that we all have a desire, but we need to make those into obtainable actions for our future. So I don't know if Jamie or Michael want to chime in here, or have any insight for any of the zillions of Zoom calls they've done on how restaurants have done that sort of thing. I know that our summit, I just want to mention that our summit is mostly focused on reducing, the single-use plastics and specifically eliminating styrofoam usage, and then also starting a compost program within restaurants. Do either of you have any insight into those goals or ways of starting that process? or a reasonable amount of time maybe for us to obtain those goals?
I'll jump in. I mean, I think it's more of a, just as a quick brainstorm, happy to share some initial thoughts.
Perfect.
From our perspective, I think the best thing would just be to identify how many restaurants we have on board here. We've got 14 people on the line. Are we representing 5 restaurants, 10 restaurants? And I would say just Zach as a central point instead of emailing Jamie and myself. I mean, you're welcome to email myself and Jamie for sure, but just so that all the communication is centralized, maybe email you, Zach, and say, I'm in. Whatever the in is, not to pay X, not to sign up for us necessarily, not to buy EcoProducts. I mean, we would love for you to sign up with us, and I'm sure Jamie would love for you to buy the EcoProducts, but not to make any commitments at this point. Just, I want to do something. I want to do something. That's it. So if you're on the line and you want to do something and you're inspired and you think collectively, those of you who are certified already, the 2 locations, and those of you who are not, make that expression to Zach. And then Zach, maybe you can share with Jamie and myself, and then we can regroup and see what a next kind of a working, this has been very educational, more of a working conversation of what are some goals? Okay, styrofoam elimination, setting up a compost program, maybe getting a green dining destination, coming up with a few different things, and seeing how we could do that and who else in our spheres might want to come to a meeting like that. That's my suggestion, is just starting small with very low level of commitment and then building relationships with each other. Because you guys heard a lot from Jamie and myself and Zach. We heard some from you. This conversation would be less of us presenting and more of a conversation of establishing certain goals and how do we get there and how we can assist you in doing that.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people backed out when we switched from in-person to virtual. So I'm hoping, for the people here, and we will send out messages. I think the follow-up is going to, having an in-person meeting this summer is going to be really important, and a lot more fun as well. So, but thank you for that insight. Jamie, do you have anything that you can add for as far as goal setting for?
I think Michael laid it out really well. It's just let's get a meeting set up with folks that are interested, have a conversation, brainstorm, approach it that way, and then let us know how we can help, where we can plug in and be a hand to hold in the process.
Awesome. So once again, thank you guys so much. And in the chat, there is Mike also put his information in there. Anybody who is here can definitely send me an email. And then, the restaurants in this group, I know that all of you have friends and people that might either be on the fence or just couldn't make it today because they live restaurant lives and have crazy schedules. So hopefully when we send out the date for the follow-up, that we can have some conversations with more restaurants in between. So, the connections that we're making at this meeting, and the work that our waste reduction meeting is doing and the environmental defenders, we have a lot of resources and a lot of people that we can contact very quickly. But, it's going to take individual restaurants like yourselves, getting on the streets and really, letting other restaurateurs know your success story and, helping them not only become more sustainable, but help them gain business by attracting more customers that will be interested in sustainability and letting them know that it can be cost effective and possible. So, I think that's some of the biggest fears of this industry, especially now that we've dealt with so much over the past couple of years, but we can build back better and stronger. There is a way, and there's lots of people out there to help us, and the demand is there. So, I will leave our goals pretty loose at this point, and I think I will stress mostly on coming to an in-person follow-up, and we can, have some drinks and food together. We can really come together and provide Michael and Jamie with some real questions that get to our specific problems and issues that we can all work together, in one place in person to get them that information. And we have some great resources here for anybody individually as well, if they'd like to reach out to them. So I don't want to take too much more of your time. I really appreciate everybody attending, and we will hopefully talk to everybody shortly. So thank you so much for coming in.
حذرتك من حاجه وما حذرتكش من حاجه، ما حدش يتلدح في الكربون.
Oh,
Thank you, everybody.
all right. Thank you very much, everyone. And
Nice to meet you all.
thank you.
Thanks, Zach.
Oh, you are very welcome. Thank you. We'll talk soon. All right. Well, thank you guys. How'd that go?
I think we got one more person in the group.
Yeah, I'm
what's
gonna
up?
just,
Are you- yeah.
you can always tell people who wandered away for a little bit, or took a break, and they come back like, oh my God. I've done that too.
Oh,
So.
all right, I forgot. But, yeah, I'll see you guys downstairs. Yeah.
All right.
All
We'll
right.
end it.
Thank you so much. I hope that went well. It was-
Definitely. No, I think it really did.
I appreciate all the help. Thank you.
Of course.